All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm here with someone who is does something actually fairly similar to what I'm doing here on this show, and I'd been meaning to get back in touch. I was a guest on your show on UMFM a while back, and it's kind of about time we I return the favor and have you on my show. But we're not just going to talk about that. I'll get you to introduce yourself in a second, but you're also a musician. There's a lot of things we can discuss here. So I think the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself and give a bit of background about what it is you do, I guess as an artist and as a radio host.
Sweet, yeah. Yeah, my name's Gareth Rice. I'm a musician. I play the piano. I just graduated from the U of M Jazz Studies program, and I have a group called the Wild Rice Quartet. We just played at the Jazz Festival this year. It was a lot of fun. And in addition to all my music stuff, I also host a radio show on UMFM called Canadiana Suite, where I program music and interview musicians, just talking about their career and like what they've been doing, their like music, what they've like different stuff, that kind of thing.
Cool, cool. And yeah, so I was on your show. I guess was it last year or was it this year? I can't even remember anymore. It was a while back though.
Uh, I think it was last year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I was very excited to be on it because you're talking to established jazz artists, and I'm this guy who kind of likes jazz on the side, mixed in with all the other stuff I listen to, and so it was very cool to be invited on your show. And just in listening to your show, maybe that's a good place to start. I mean, you're not just focusing on local artists; you're talking to jazz players from sort of all over the place. What is the origin of the show? Like, how did you get this started?
Yeah, I guess the origin of the show can be kind of traced back to John Gordon,
Okay,
because he sent out an email to a bunch of the I guess different people and asking, "Oh, I'd be really interesting." I was talking with Jared from UMFM about doing a jazz radio show, and I was like, "Oh, be I could do that." And I was like, I was like, "Oh, sure, yeah, I'd be interested."
yeah,
Because I'd always been really interested in like radio. I was a weird kid where I didn't listen to like music. I listened to like just radio shows. So that kind of got me interested in like the Star Wars audio dramas. So I was
sure,
like, I like
yeah,
asking questions. We'll see how this goes. And then I sent in like a program to start, and that's how it kind of started.
cool.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and I guess for the interviewing part, I think it was when Eric St. Godard he had a EP out called Perspectives, and he messaged me about playing it on the show, and he also mentioned that it'd be cool to do an interview, and I was like, interview? I've never done an interview before. And then my dad kind of convinced me into doing it because he's like, you like asking questions, right? And I was like, sure, yeah, I'll see how this goes. And I've met Eric before, so and then we did the interview, and then I was like, oh, John has a new record. I know John. I'll try doing an interview there. And then like Fred has a new record. Let's ask Fred about that. And Tatiana has a new record, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
here
Well,
we
and
are.
obviously you've gotten better at it too. I mean, like you definitely don't sound like sort of a new to interviewing at this point because you've done so many of them now. But where did you get these contacts from? Because obviously the people you played with through your studies and the professors and things like that. But I mean, like you said, you've just finished your jazz studies, right? So I mean, you were a student
Yep.
throughout most of the time the show has existed. So where do you find like how are you reaching out to these people? You're finding people from across the country, from elsewhere. What's sort of the what's your strategy for tracking down guests?
Um, yeah, I guess part of it is just cold calling emails, like send like, hi, my name's Gareth Rice. I run a radio show. Would you be interested in doing an interview? And I guess kind of timing that to like if they have an album out or if they
Totally.
have like a new project out that they're interested in. And I guess part of it also is like there's different publicity firms. I got some referrals from Michael who works at UMFM, and I got in contact with some of them, and also Orange Grove Publicity as well.
Yeah, they've helped
Um,
me out with a few
and I
interviews as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're great. Because they do a lot of work for Canadian and like non-Canadian artists. So I guess kind of just keeping on track with that and like emailing them whenever there's a new artist I want to interview or play on their show, kind of thing.
Have you do you have sort of artists like that are bucket list interviews you'd like to do? Like, are you yeah, obviously you're doing regular interviews, but are there people sort of on a higher echelon that you would love to talk to that you haven't maybe reached out to yet, or you have and you haven't heard back? Like, is there sort of a dream guest you'd like to have?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a ton. I guess I try to keep my expectations pretty like medium. Like I don't want to hype myself up too much because it can be kind of tricky when you want to like interview somebody and like you know that you'd have like good questions for them and be a good person to talk to and you don't get a response back.
Yeah,
So I guess I try and keep my expectations in check and then I start kind of ramping up the expectation meter if they have a new project out, then it's like, and I try emailing them, and if it's like if that doesn't work out, then that's fine. You just kind of roll with the punches kind of thing.
Yeah, you go
But
into the next potential guest for sure. I definitely
yeah.
know the struggle. Yeah, yeah. Um, so now that you're finished the jazz stuff at university, do you intend to continue doing the show? Because I mean, the show is I know it's on campus, but it's a campus community station, so you don't have to be a student to run a show there. Are you hoping to continue with it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's been one of my favorite parts of not my degree, but like parts of like things that are related to my degree, kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
Because like just getting to talk to different musicians and like getting to hear their stories in addition to like just playing music, it's been like a whole other different kind of side to like I guess jazz music that I've never really considered before.
yeah.
And that's been really I've really been fortunate in like just getting to interview so many different people and stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to get into your own music in a second, but has have these interviews have they contributed to sort of have they affected your sound in any way as far as the way that you've approached music after talking to all these people and getting their insights and their points of view on the way they approach jazz? Has that seeped into your own playing, or whether it's like consciously or not?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think kind of I guess in a kind of a direct way where I hear like an artist talking about a tune or like I hear like an album and I'm like, that's a cool tune. I'd like to play that with my quartet. And then I think one of the tunes I played at the jazz festival last year called Shovel Pants, that was by Mike Rudd, who's in Vancouver, and he like there's a really cool tune he played with Peter Bernstein. So I was like, yeah, it would be a great tune to play. And I guess in a more conceptual sense, I guess yeah, it's been really cool just getting to hear different like takes on like how they kind of figure out like composition and like how they conceptualize like playing with different people, and that's kind of influenced how I kind of write or
Okay,
how I kind of think of like band leading.
okay, that's
So I
cool. Yeah.
guess yeah,
Well, what is I mean, I know we just kind of talked about the origin of the show, but what's your background in jazz? Obviously, you've been studying it, you've been playing a lot of shows. You're a band leader, you're talking to jazz musicians, you're very immersed in this. What's the sort of what was the in to jazz for you? Like, when did you get into it, and what was the appeal? I guess as a player.
yeah. The funny thing is, I don't remember how I got into jazz. I remember what I did that got me like into like the U of M, and I
Okay,
remember doing jazz camps, jazz collectives, like with like, but I don't remember exactly. It said I wanted to do jazz. I don't remember. The aliens erased my brain. Um, but I think the closest thing I can kind of narrow it down to is the Vincent Massey jam sessions.
okay,
That really kind of inspired me. And I guess like the jazz camps and the jazz collective as well at U of M. And then I was like, I know about the jazz camps at U of M. I've been there, so I want to study here because I used to do classical,
okay,
and
okay,
that was a big kind of I really enjoyed it for a while, and I wanted to do more improv stuff. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how it started, and
okay.
it got implanted in my brain.
Right, something happened that's been erased now, and you're too deep into it to go back. Um,
Yeah,
was jazz something you listened to like when you were younger though? Like, was this something that was sort of in the background of what you were doing, just in your life at all?
actually, no, not really. It was mostly classical because my dad was a big he got me really into classical. Like we'd
Okay,
hunt down like CDs and like he got me into like Beethoven and like listening to a bunch of stuff. I think it was kind of listening to video game soundtracks that kind of got me interested in jazz, like the harmony, especially like different like super like Kirby Superstar Ultra, like Zelda, Mario, Final Fantasy. Like hearing that harmony, I was like, oh, I've never heard this in a classical piece before. Or like with John Williams, like Star Wars and stuff.
sure.
And then I think it was just like, oh, jazz is improv. I like doing improv. So let's connect these two things. And then I think it was when I heard McCoy Tyner playing on The Real McCoy. That was like a huge, like eye-opening moment for me.
Okay.
And like playing hearing Herbie Hancock, like Oscar Peterson, that was like huge. And that kind of like it was a big watershed moment, I guess.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the video game stuff because I'm not a gamer. I've always been bad at video games, so I never really got into them. Just the hand-eye coordination never worked for me. So I never really got too deeply into the whole video game thing. But it seems like it's a very common thing at this point in time for people to have been influenced by video game music, whether it's just the music composed for the games or like in later years where they started having actual real songs on there. I know tons of people who've discovered bands from video games, and to me, as someone who doesn't play them, that blew my mind when I first heard about that because I don't think about it. I think about it as you're doing the game, but there's obviously this whole other audio sound side to it that is obviously influencing younger people, sort of because that's what they grow up hearing, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. There's a huge video game music scene, especially for
Yeah,
like bands and stuff, where it's like they can hear the harmony and kind of apply it in a kind of like a jazz standard kind of way and like in a jazz fusion sense too. And there's like really good examples. Like Chrono Trigger is a really big one with like jazz harmony soundtrack. Like the Final Fantasy games, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. There's like a bunch of different examples that like people have like kind of latched on to. And even if you don't know if it's like a jazz kind of influenced soundtrack, like someone can say, "Oh, this harmony is really interesting. I like this,"
right,
and that
right.
might kind of hit them to something else, like Herbie Hancock or Anomaly or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. It's something like I said, something I never considered about. I mean, my kids play video games now, and I hear stuff on it, and it's these are songs on the records that I have in my mom on my shelf, and they're listening to it via some video game. It's crazy. Um, when it comes to your own your quartet, how long have you? How long has the quartet been around? Is it the same lineup sort of consistently, or do you change players in and out?
yeah, it's been the same lineup, pretty much. I think the idea for it kind of started, I think when my fourth year, when Liam and Dan were in the same group that I was, and Fabio Regnelli was leading it, and we just kind of bring in tunes, and I know we like the sound of each other, like just playing with each other with different tunes, and like getting really into like Thelonious Monk.
Okay,
And then I'd pull out some weird kind of like piano stuff, and Fabio was like, "Oh, there's Wild Rice doing it again." And then I think I was like, "Oh, it'd be cool to play the jazz festival with these guys and like with Tatiana." So what's a good name? And oh, the Wild Rice Quartet. So so Fabio is credited um as I guess the inspiration for the name, I guess.
cool,
And
cool.
yeah,
Well, and how often do you play? Because I mean, I'm sure I've seen you. I think I saw you at a Red House show. You guys played a Red House show,
yeah.
right? Yeah, I was at that, and that was cool. And I've seen your name on a couple of years now of Jazz Fest posters. How often are you actually out there performing?
I'd say not as much as I'd like to. I guess because it's kind of tricky for like quartet gigs to kind of go around like Winnipeg. So we mostly just played at like Jazz Fest and like Red House, but I definitely like to play more. But I guess it depends on like the Winnipeg scene
Yeah.
and like who to contact, like where to play, kind of thing.
Well, that's something that I always kind of just because I talk to people from jazz to country to death metal to hip hop to whatever, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think that a lot of people, regardless of genre, are trying to figure out where they fit within the local music scene. There's so many venues, so many shows happening, but if you play something that's kind of not in the standard, roots country, bluegrass, or metal punk hardcore, those are sort of like the main areas where the show's happening all the time, and then everyone else is trying to figure out where they fit sort of within the larger ecosystem. It would be
yeah,
cool to see. I've always wanted to see a jazz band playing at like a punk show or something completely like incongruous, like a hip hop show or something. Have
yeah.
you like considered sort of reaching out into the other areas of the local music scene and then trying to get shows there?
I haven't. I've considered it, but I haven't actually like started doing it yet. But that'd be cool because I know there's like a huge scene in like Park Alleys right now. There's like a
Yeah,
jam session there. There's like the Handsome Daughter. Well, I guess that's different, but like there's like a bunch of different like clubs around Winnipeg you could try. But
for sure. Yeah, it
yeah,
would be
you
it would
just
be
need to
cool.
like yeah,
So what I guess what are you influenced by? I mean, like you mentioned the video game thing. You obviously mentioned a few piano players that are sort of like the big bold-faced names that got you
yeah.
interested in doing this. What are you listening to now? What's inspiring the quartet at this point in time?
Um, I guess the general idea of like the set list I think of when I figure out like music is I want to kind of highlight semi-obscure standards or semi-obscure tunes that aren't really played as much
Okay,
within like a mix of like I guess well-known stuff and like originals of the Mood Strikes. So I guess kind of like trying to highlight that a bit. Um, so I guess for the example for what I was like just talking about, the Jazz Fest show that we just did, the first tune we did was called "The Firefly" by a person named Emily Remler,
okay,
and she's like this underrated guitarist who was really inspired by Wes Montgomery and Grant Green, and like she didn't really get the recognition as much until like later, but I love her tunes. Um, so that was like big, and then I guess I like playing video game. I like arranging video game tunes as well. So if I can sneak one in there, then it's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, yeah. And then I guess recently I've been checking out like a bunch of different stuff like Paul Simon, Billy Joel, McCoy Tyner, Brad Mehldau. Alan Holdsworth is like a huge guy for me. Kurt Rosenwinkel, Pat Metheny, like there's a whole bunch.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. And those are
Yeah.
all sort of different subgenres and stuff too, right? I mean, even the ones you mentioned who are within the jazz umbrella, they're all doing different
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I often go down like listening rabbit holes. It's like insane. My algorithm is really weird. Right now, like my YouTube algorithm is just like tracker music, like from old like video game stuff. Just
Okay.
like
Huh.
yeah, completely out of what I was just completely separate from what I was just talking about. Yeah.
Do you I mean, I know we're talking about the quartet here, but do you are you able to do this stuff live solo? Like have you performed solo just you and a piano, or do you prefer having sort of the group with you? Because I imagine obviously it would work. People clearly
Yeah.
do that, right?
Yeah, I guess not as like I've done like some solo piano stuff before. Like I've played at the Hoop and Holler Folk Festival
Okay.
a couple of times. And I've done like some gigs like Thomas Hines and like so I've definitely done like a lot of solo stuff. So I'm pretty used to it, I'd say. But yeah. I don't know. Do you mean like in terms of like the as like the quartet thing or
No,
just
I mean
for me?
obviously the quartet is a quartet. There's four of you, but I
Yeah,
mean,
that would make sense. Yeah.
I guess like a better way to approach that question maybe is: do you have a preference? Like, are you like quite happy and
Oh,
comfortable playing solo gigs, or would you rather have the group with you? Like, is it? It's obviously a different vibe for you
yeah.
and for the audience, right? Like, which one do you prefer?
I'd say personally, I definitely prefer playing in like a quartet because there's more, I guess, community. You can kind of like react to different people
Yeah,
and like kind of like play off of them a bit more. And then playing solo, like solo is fun, but the thing about playing solo for very long is that your back starts to hurt because you have like no back support or anything. But what if you're playing duo, then like that doesn't really matter as much because you can like react and it's like it's still kind of I don't know how, like it's there's still like a like it's not as big as like a quartet, but it's like there's still like a sense of like two people playing together.
right. It's not just
Yeah.
you playing the whole time. You're interacting with the other person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. What is the sort of the next what's in the cards for the quartet? Like, are you planning on doing any recording, releasing any albums, EPs, singles, things like that?
Yeah, I think the next step is I guess Dan's currently he's going to New York City in August to do his master's.
Okay.
So I think it'd be really cool to do a recording kind of as like a snapshot before he leaves for NYC. Just like just record, just have like kind of fun, like not an album, but like just a couple of tunes to play and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I
And
mean
see where
it
that
helps as
goes.
a calling card, right? At least even if you have those
Yeah,
tunes, you can be like, "Oh, this is what the quartet sounds like." Give us a show at whatever venue you're going for, right?
yeah, yeah, just like something to like I don't know, cap off the year or whatever. Or
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
if people want to hear your show, I mean, I know we kind of switched gears talking about the group now, but I mean, UMFM 101.5 in Winnipeg is, I recommend everyone should listen to that station. They broadcast my show at some weird time of the day, and I've been listening to them steadily for their entire existence. Basically, I love it. But how do people find you? When is it on? Where can they find you if you're not in Winnipeg?
Um, they can find the show on Tuesdays, 6:30 to 8 on UMFM 101.5. And there's also an archive on the website where you can find a bunch of the interviews and some of the program shows that I've done.
Okay.
And I've also got an Instagram social media where I post every interview that I do and like the sets. So you can definitely check there if you're
Cool.
interested in checking out the show. Yeah.
And how many interviews do you have approximately at this point? Like how deep is the archive? Because I've ventured into it, but I've usually I mean I shouldn't admit this because I would prefer people didn't do this with my own show, but I've mostly listened to people I've heard of and people whose music I'm familiar with. So I've kind of picked and chose. I intend to go back and actually check out the ones I don't know because that's sort of the best thing to do with a music
Yeah.
show. But like how deep is the archive?
I think the archive is pretty like I think it's past 100 shows at this point, maybe like
Nice.
130 or something, which is kind of insane.
It's a lot. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's even past that number for like people that I've interviewed, which is actually kind of insane. Like for like program sets, like that number kind of rises, but like interviewing over 100 people,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely an accomplishment for sure. I mean, especially starting out and just sort of almost falling into the idea of interviewing someone because of, like you said, you were just sort of approached, hey, do you want to do an interview? And now
yeah,
you're at 100 and some episodes deep. That's cool. Yeah,
and I guess like the whole prospect of that is kind of terrifying, but I think if I can kind of like, if someone's listening to an interview, if I'm interviewing somebody, if I can kind of like provide a snapshot of like the artist as they are, like as like a person or how where they are in their career,
yeah,
then I've essentially done my job. Like
totally,
I'm kind of like a facilitator, I guess. And also if like the person listening of him, oh, like this person has like terrible questions, whatever. I like how like I love programming sets where like the music can kind of like explain what necessarily the interview can't,
totally. Yeah,
which is a
yeah.
cheesy sentiment, but like, yeah.
I know
And
what you
like
mean. Yeah,
I'm just one guy too. It's like you can listen to a bunch of different interviews of like the same person. So I'm kind of like the one of many kind of thing, which is pretty cool.
I think that's sort of the best thing about things like podcasts and campus community radio and all of this DIY sort of radio shows is the idea that people are out there interviewing artists that maybe aren't getting the type of attention that they deserve, first of all, or aren't getting attention from sort of a wider, broader audience. And it's sort of making this stuff available. And yeah, the fact that this exists floating around the internet somewhere, in perpetuity, someone could find that artist's music, discover your interview, and then go find your show and realize, oh wait, there's hundreds of these now. I'm going to go discover like my new favorite jazz artist.
Yeah. And it's like there's always like room to improve in terms of like questions, like in terms of like being more articulate, kind of listening more or like speaking slowly, that kind of thing. So that kind of like keeps it interesting. And it doesn't give me the existential dread that necessarily like music school could have given me, I
Sure,
guess. Because it's like I don't know, it's always a room to improve in terms of like just talking to somebody, which is you can always improve that. So it's
totally. Yeah,
like,
yeah. I'm
yeah,
I'm 900 and something episodes in, and I have plenty of things I can improve for sure. Yeah,
yeah. So it's just
especially
like, I don't know. Yeah.
especially talking
Which is
fast. Yeah, and interrupting
yeah.
people.
Yeah, we're guilty as charged.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to hear the quartet, the good thing about being a podcast is they could hear it the day it comes out, or they could hear it, apparently I'm going to keep doing the show forever, so it could be like 5 years from now, a year and a half, whatever. What's the best way to find out what you're up to as far as potential upcoming shows? Maybe by the time someone finds this, you will have recorded something. What's the best way to keep track of what's happening with the Wild Rice Quartet?
I guess the current one is probably Facebook or Instagram. Those are probably the best things to figure out what we're doing. And I guess like if we have a gig, then the gig person will probably post it on their website.
Yeah,
So
hopefully. Yeah.
yeah,
And do you
yeah,
have an Instagram and Facebook like specifically for the group too?
no,
No, just under your own name.
yeah, under my own name.
Cool,
So
cool.
yeah.
And then at the time we're recording this, which is getting into late July here. Do you have anything coming up as far as shows? Like, are there any shows on the horizon that you have booked or are hoping to have booked?
I've got one in Portage la Prairie. We're playing to 20 the October 20th at St. Mary's. So we're
Okay.
playing there for a bit. And I think that's pretty much about it, I guess. And if anything else comes up, then we'll figure out what happens.
Yeah, yeah, cool, cool. And people can
Yeah.
check out the Facebook and the Instagram and find you there, and obviously listen to the show. Do you want to plug the show one more time when people can hear it and where they can hear it?
Yeah, if you'd like to hear, I guess the show, Tuesdays, not 9, Tuesdays 6:30 to 8, on UFM 101, on, okay. I'm gonna say this one more time
Yeah, go for it.
slowly.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. If you want to hear the show, Canadiana Suite, Tuesdays 6:30 to 8 at UMFM 101.5, or on the website, and you can check out the archive link on the website.
Awesome.
Yeah, there, I got it
Cool.
there.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.